Hello and welcome to Easter Monday. Now, if you've been following my philosophical meanderings throughout history, you will notice that there is something different. And the thing that's different is I've changed my position. I've actually moved to a much more comfortable chair, so there is a very strong possibility that I will fall asleep at some point in this very comfortable chair. The other thing is that if your eyesight is really sharp, you will notice that I haven't ironed my shirt. I've got to the point, nobody comes to visit unless it's the postman, and I don't get food deliveries. So unless it's the postman, nobody comes to see me. Nobody rings, nobody calls. So I'm getting to that point. Why do I need to dress up? Why do I need to iron a shirt? Who is it I'm trying to impress? So there is a very, very strong possibility that between now and until the lockdown is lifted and we are no longer locked down but free to go, there is a very strong possibility that I will sit here in my meanderings with unironed clothes on. I've still got my pyjamas on under my unironed shirt, but no bacon roll by my side. Anyway, welcome to Easter Monday. Now, on Easter Sunday, I shared a reading not from Mark, but from John's Gospel. John's Gospel is very different from the other three, Matthew, Mark and Luke. But because I wanted to do the filming in the cemetery, or part of the filming in the cemetery of the Old Kirk, I thought that John's Gospel, the resurrection story from John's Gospel, fitted the flavour of what I was trying to get across. So today, just because I fancied it in my unironed shirt and my pyjamas, today I'm going to read you Mark's story of the resurrection experience. And there is something different. All the resurrection stories in all four Gospels are different, but this is Mark's Gospel. So although I've been looking at Mark's Gospel from the beginning, I've taken a quantum leap and moved from halfway through chapter 2 to the very last chapter, which is chapter 16. So this is Mark's take on the resurrection story. Are you sitting comfortably in your pyjamas with a custard cream and a cup of tea? Lucky you. So, Mark chapter 16, verse 1. After the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought spices to go to anoint the body of Jesus. Very early on Sunday morning at sunrise, they went to the tomb. On the way, they said to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" It was a very large stone. Then they looked up and saw that the stone had already been rolled back. So they entered the tomb, where they saw a young man sitting on the right, wearing a white robe. And they were alarmed. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "I know you are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He is not here. He has been raised. Look, here is a place where they put him. Now go and give this message to his disciples, including Peter. He is going to Galilee ahead of you. There you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and ran from the tomb, distressed and terrified. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. Now that, in the original versions of Mark's Gospel, that's where he finishes. That's where Mark's Gospel finishes. And if you've been following this in your own Bible, you'll be saying to me, hold on a wee that man in his unironed shirt is telling a lie. Well, I'm not. But I know where you're coming from, because you're looking at your Bible and you're seeing another spiel after I just finished reading from verse 9, which goes to verse 20. Those verses were added on at a later period. So the original version of Mark's Gospel stopped where I finished. You'll notice already, if you were paying attention to yesterday's reading, if you tuned into yesterday's recording, that yesterday it was just Mary Magdalene who went to the tomb, and she saw two angels, described as angels, one at the foot and one at the head. Here it's three women, in Mark's version, three women who go, and there is one person in the tomb, and he's described as a young man, not as an angel, and he is described as sitting on the right, wearing a white robe. And he has a longer conversation with these three women than the two angels that met with Mary Magdalene in yesterday's story from John's Gospel. So, the reason that the women went there, this is my summary and this is my kind of take on it, but the reason that the women went there, that there wasn't enough time to render the last services to Jesus because of the Sabbath. So this was the first time, the first availability, whether it was Mary Magdalene on her own or whether she was accompanied by other women, but this was the first time that either Mary or others had the time and the opportunity to prepare properly the body of Jesus, to anoint him with spices, to wrap his body in linen, and to do what they needed to do. They went basically to pay their respects. Now, the attitude of the disciples was the very opposite from the attitude of the women. As far as they were concerned, it was over. It had ended in tragedy. So they just locked themselves away in their grief, feeling depressed. Now, this is one of the crunch moments of the Christian faith. As I said yesterday, you either believe, with a bit of tweaking, that somehow or other Jesus came back to life because the tomb was empty and there was conversations with angels and young men dressed in white robes. But that's not enough, is it? You know, that's an empty tomb. Is that proof? Maybe for some of you it is proof enough, and that is good. I think the proof of the resurrection for me is the existence of the church. The church is not perfect. As a representative of the Christian church, I am not perfect. But the church today is definitely not perfect. The church, with all its corruption, with all its faults, and with all its blemishes, and with all even its persecution and its judgment, it still exists in a broken way. It still exists. It may well be in 200 to 300 years that it may no longer exist. I do not know, because I'm not going to be around in 200 to 300 years. But at the moment, it has existed since the death and resurrection of Jesus, in a broken way, but it still exists. That to me is proof. That to me tells me that those early disciples put their own lives at risk by leaving their homes, by going beyond their locked doors, to say to the populace might be very difficult for you to believe, but a man came back from the dead. Now, they could have been sent to the clinky. They too could have been crucified for simply saying that. But they had enough conviction and faith to tell themselves, this is true. This has happened. The other thing about the resurrection story is that, for me, this is all about me, that Jesus is no longer a figure in a book, but a presence, a living presence, not a memory, because even the best memories and even the most cherished memories can fade. So he's not a memory, but he's a living presence. And I suppose the final thing about Jesus is that, and this is a faith statement, because there's a huge difference about knowing about a person and knowing a person. I know a wee bit about the Queen or Prince Charles or Napoleon or any celebrity that's on the telly. I know about them because I read about them and I form my own judgments, but I don't know them. I've never had deep and meaningful and profound conversations with them, so I don't know them. And I suppose the faith statement is we can look at Jesus as a figure of history, and that's fine. But the next step is getting to know him as a person. And I think, I was going to stop there and just say, and I'll see you tomorrow, but because sometimes these thoughts just come to my head and I think, and I'm now thinking about that, it is, I wonder, even, and I'm including myself here, I never talk about people without including myself in the mix. I put myself in the mix. But I wonder if it's a case of that for many people, and maybe even for some church people, Jesus really is a figure of history. And they know of him, but they don't know him. That's you know what, for the rest of Easter Monday, I think I will ponder that and ask myself, I put that question to me, do I know Jesus? Or is he some philosophical, interesting, historical character who intrigues me? Yeah, that's my take on that today. The whole idea of these studies is to try and fathom out what faith means. Now, faith really does mean it's that leap into the darkness. It's that kind of leap of faith. You don't know. There is no tangible proof. You just go with it. Now, I've taken that leap into the darkness. And sometimes I've kind of taken a step back the way and questioned a lot. And I don't mind that. I make no apologies for that. But yeah, I think that's an interesting concept. Who is Jesus? There's the summary. Who is Jesus for you? And who is Jesus for me? And I'll leave that with you on this Easter Monday. Keep safe.